Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is a podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
Welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and I am very happy to be with you on this Tuesday following a 3-day weekend. If you got to enjoy 3 days off from work, I hope you had a wonderful time. I actually did get to enjoy 3 days off, and I had one of those weekends that was like the perfect combination of productive and lazy. I really like those, when I feel like I actually get some stuff done that needs to be done, but I also had time to just, lounge with my puppies and read and do some things or not do some things, as the case may be. But one of the things that I did accomplish over the weekend was an interview, as I often do on weekends. And this time I spoke with Ed Rucker about his new book. It's called Justice Makes a Killing. It is a legal thriller, and it is the second in his series. The series features a defense lawyer, whose name is Bobby Earl. And the description of the book is this. When Bobby Earl meets the beautiful but vulnerable Kate Carlson, a prominent LA lawyer who awaits trial in a small-town jail for a murder during a prison break, he thinks he knows what's at stake. Negotiate a decent plea deal for a guilty client, pocket his fee, and move on. But Kate insists she's been set up. To find the truth, Bobby must risk his own life, career, and everything he loves by dredging up secrets of the billion-dollar prison industry and the powerful California Prison Guards Union in a desperate battle against a powerful and expanding conspiracy. So that is the description of Justice Makes a Killing. As I mentioned, this is the second in the Bobby Earl series of books. The first one is called The Inevitable Witness, and then this one, as I said, is Justice Makes a Killing. And it's a legal thriller, so there's all kinds of plot twists and conspiracies and things that are going on. As you heard in the description, the woman that Bobby Earl is defending is Kate Carlson, and she insists that she's been set up. And so as Bobby begins investigating this and trying to figure out how he is going to defend Kate in this instance, he just starts uncovering all of these different layers. And as the book goes on, those layers, he starts digging down more and finding more. So you get the mystery part of that, but then you also get a pretty fascinating look at a high-profile trial. Yes, that rhymed, a high-profile trial, but and what it means to be a defense lawyer in a high-profile trial. And I found this fascinating because, of course, it's not like what you see on TV, and I knew it wouldn't be like what you saw on TV, but I don't have a lot of experience with actual trials, high profile or not. I know that they are not going to be the same as on TV, but that truth is often, more dramatic or stranger than fiction, although this is fiction. But Ed was a practicing defense lawyer for 40 years, so he definitely knows what he's talking about when it comes to trials. So you still have that high level of drama and high stakes in this book, but you get a much more detailed and nuanced look at a trial. And, when you watch on TV, they have to fit everything into a certain amount of time, and they have to make it dramatic and compelling so that you want to stay tuned, which is understandable. So you definitely get a deeper look in this book at a trial. So there's that aspect, there's the mystery aspect, there's the thriller aspect. There's a couple of very sweet little dogs in the book, so I'm going to like that. At any rate, it is a very interesting and compelling read. So let's go ahead and turn to the interview. Before we do that, though, I do have copies of Justice Makes a Killing to give away. So if you are interested in a copy of this legal thriller, stay tuned to the end of the podcast to find out how you can win a copy of Justice Makes a Killing by Ed Rucker. And now let's go ahead and turn to that interview with Ed. Hi, Ed. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Sarah. It's great to be here.
I am very happy to have you here. We are here to talk about your new book, Justice Makes a Killing. Before we get to the book, though, and the series, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Well, I have been a criminal defense lawyer my entire 40 years of career, and in that time I tried over 200 jury trials, including 13 death penalty cases here in California to juries. I've written a 7-volume work that's in its 4th edition on criminal practice, and lectured extensively about it. So I have a vast deal of experience in the trial of criminal cases.
And now you are writing legal thriller, legal mysteries. What would you call them, mysteries or thrillers?
They're legal thrillers.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's a series. It's the main character is Bobby Earl. So this is the second book in the series, so we'll start with the first book and just get a bit of an overview of the series?
Certainly. The first book, The Inevitable Witness, involves the story of a case that Bobby Earl is defending, and that is a legendary safecracker who is charged with the murder of an undercover police officer. We follow the book through the viewpoint of Bobby Earl, the defense lawyer, as he investigates the case. It culminates in a full jury trial, which hopefully gives the reader a view of what an authentic, high-profile, high-pressure murder trial is like. It's a death penalty case, so they get a bit of a understanding of how a death penalty case is tried. And I try and work in a couple social issues that I think some readers seem to enjoy learning something other than the actual mystery story itself, and that is I use the professional informant system as something to explore, that these are informants that the prosecution routinely uses in cases who either try and buy their freedom from a criminal charge that they're facing by either eliciting a confession or making one up. And it's a practice that prosecutors use in both the federal and the state cases. It results in a significant number of innocent people being convicted, according to the appellate records of people who've been released.
Oh, wow.
The second thing I think is interesting for the reader is the effect of the media has on the trial of cases. Publicity sort of puts all the participants in a pressure cooker. And in this book, the media is embodied in an individual who has a television show and his nickname is the Thumb, because he puts his thumb on the scales of justice whenever a case is in the light of publicity. And it culminates in a full jury trial that hopefully gives the reader a opportunity to see how a real trial would unfold, which just in itself, high-pressure cases are high drama. And it's worth them exploring how the rules of evidence, the vagaries of witnesses, and the skill of a cross-examiner they might find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
At least I hope so.
Okay, so that's the first book. This one is the second book. It's called Justice Makes a Killing. Give a bit of an overview of this story.
In this case, Bobby Earl represents a very prominent woman lawyer who's a named partner in a very large, prestigious law firm in Los Angeles. She's also the spokesperson for a voter initiative here in California to abolish the use of private prisons to incarcerate individuals that have been sentenced by our courts. She's charged with assisting an inmate at this private prison to escape. And in the attempted escape, a prison guard is shot and killed, and the inmate himself is killed. The physical evidence against his client, Kate Carlson, is overwhelming. And at first glance, it appears to be a case that's not defendable. But Kate tells him that not only is she innocent, but she's been framed. And as he investigates the case in preparation for trial, he finds two shadowy forces working against her, and that is the private prison industry, which is $1 billion industry in our country, and the California Prison Guards Union, which is the most powerful lobbying force in California politics. Both these, I have attempted to keep the facts in the case scrupulously honest and accurate.
Mm-hmm.
The private prison industry has these prisons in almost every state and in a number of countries around the world. It's $1 billion industry, and it's operated on the for-profit model in which they'll build a prison. There are 8 in the state of California, for example, and they will sign a contract with the state to house inmates at their private prisons. And they make a profit on that by not wasting, quote-unquote, any money on rehabilitation or efforts to allow these inmates to become accepted, contributing members of society when they are released. There's no drug programs, there's no educational programs. They are just warehouses. In fact, they're paid on a per diem basis for each day an inmate is in the prison. It's run like a hotel. The second issue, which is factually based, is that the California Prison Guards Union is correct. Part of their dues go into campaign contributions to politicians who set their salaries. So now the guards in California, with their very routine overtime pay, earn more than an assistant professor with a PhD at the University of California. They also were the union was also responsible for starting this mass incarceration campaign that spread around the country about 15, 20 years ago. They were the original sponsor of the Three Strikes Law, which retired Supreme Court Justice Kennedy, in a speech at Pepperdine University, said that their sponsorship was, quote, sick. And the reason they did that was that the longer and longer sentences result in inmates being retained in prison for a longer period of time. Therefore, when a new inmate is sentenced there, the prison gets overcrowded to the point where the U.S. Supreme Court said that California prisons violate the cruel and unusual punishment clause of the Constitution. So the result, when California had the money, they would build more prisons. We went from 10 prisons to 32.
Wow.
And that still didn't solve it, because they kept getting the legislation to increase the length of punishment. Didn't create new crimes. You couldn't create really new crimes. But instead of serving 5 years, they'll serve 15. Or they'll serve life. We have a lot of life inmates. And so they had to turn to the private prisons because they couldn't afford to build more prisons. And so it's a symbiotic relationship between the union and the private prison industry to house these people.
Okay.
So it hopefully this is I've woven this into the story. It's not a pedantic. I've just been explaining it in a sort of a lecture form. It's not a pedantic recitation in the book. It just comes out in the story itself.
Right. All right, so I'm going to jump in here, and we're going to take our first break of the podcast, but you've gotten an idea of what this story is about and some of the context with the prison guard union and why Kate is saying that she has been framed and kind of the stakes that are in play here. So we are going to take our first break of the podcast. When we come back, we'll be talking more about Justice Makes a Killing with Ed Rucker. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. Before the break, Ed was speaking about the some of the context for the story in Justice Makes a Killing. He was talking about the prison guard union and some of the reasons that Kate feels she has been framed, or insists that she has been framed. She doesn't feel it. She knows that she's been framed, and insists that she has. So let's go ahead and get back to that interview with Ed. So was the private prison industry kind of your inspiration for this book, or did you start somewhere else and then weave that aspect into it?
Well, it was I was astounded that no one was really aware of this at the time. It's now gotten some more publicity because 3 out of every 4 immigrants who are arrested for crossing the border are now housed in a private prison in America. But the story itself is the main inspiration for the book. Hopefully, it's a story that would entertain a reader, and the weaving in of the private prisons and the union guards are just something that on the side, hopefully it'll be interesting for them to learn about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk a little bit more about Bobby Earl as the main character, the protagonist. What about him do you think might resonate with readers?
Well, first of all, he's an authentic depiction of a criminal defense lawyer. He is the opposite of what the reader may see on Law and Order on television, for example, where oftentimes the defense lawyer is depicted as a mere extension of the criminal that they're representing. They're depicted as dishonest, sort of shabby characters. He's a dedicated professional who fights hard for his clients. And he is a brilliant trial lawyer, so that as this book unfolds, it culminates in a full jury trial. And hopefully the reader can see, through his viewpoint, some of the strengths and weaknesses of our criminal justice system, and what it's the impact of real rules of evidence on presenting the case for someone who he learns is innocent, and the skill required to cross-examine witnesses and bring out the truth from people who would rather gargle battery acid than admit some of these facts. And it shows the great sort of dilemma that a dedicated criminal defense lawyer has in trying to have a somewhat balanced life. He has a girlfriend named Samantha, who is a deputy district attorney here in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And his focus on representing his client and the time and the loss of sleep over worry that he has makes it difficult to balance his life with Sam. And also the fact that we touch on that the attitude of prosecutors now is that rather than both the defense lawyer and the prosecutors are professionals who try a case by a set of rules, compete fiercely against each other, but don't take things personally, has changed. It's more of a tribal attitude. And so Sam, being a prosecutor, her colleagues in the office, when they learn of her relationship with Bobby Earl, feel somehow that she is compromised and might share office information with him or do something unethical. Mm-hmm. So that's another obstacle to them.
Right.
But they bond a bit because she has a dog who sort of a dog with a permanent bad hair day and scraggly teeth, who she's named Beauty.
I was just going to say, but...
And Bobby has a hound dog who is unfortunately named Henceforth.
Yes.
Because he took great pride in trying to come up with, when he first got the dog, an appropriate name. So each night he would come home with a different name and say, henceforth your name will be, X, Y, or Z. And finally, after a week, the only name he would respond to was henceforth. So he finds a way to involve himself in various aspects of the case.
Yes, and I loved that. I loved the story about Henceforth's name. It made me laugh.
Yeah, he's a character.
Yes,
he's a real character.
Yes. So a lot of this, I'm sure, is from your own experience because you did spend 40 years as a trial lawyer. Did you do specific research for the book?
I did research on the prison guards union, and I did research on private prisons. But the old adage that you write about what you know, and I know jury trials. By that I don't mean I'm an expert on every aspect of a jury trial. No defense lawyer really is. But I've tried enough. I've known enough defense lawyers and prosecutors and judges and over the years, and so the case, when it culminates in a full jury trial, will hopefully reflect an authentic view of what a trial is like, not in some kind of pedantic way, but through the actual story of this woman and how you have to attempt to skirt the rules of evidence to get in your evidence, how the prosecutor can use it on the other side to get in her evidence. And so hopefully a jury will get a different view of what a real trial consists of. And real trials at that level, where someone's life is on the line, is high drama.
And it's definitely different. I mean, as you said earlier, like shows like Law and Order or shows that depict trial, they have to fit everything into an hour with commercials. So you definitely get a much more detailed, nuanced look at how this process works, and it's very different than watching it on a TV drama.
Yes, in for example, Law and Order, the lawyer will, in the form of a question, recite their theory of the case or the motivation of this particular witness without any evidence to support it. There'll be an objection, and then they'll just say withdrawn. So they're sort of telling their side of the case without having to elicit the facts from witnesses, and that's the real challenge in a trial.
And the judge in your book does not let her lawyers get away with that.
No.
I noticed that, yes.
The profession of criminal defense lawyers, prosecutors, and judges and police officers, by the vast majority of which are extremely ethical and try and stay within the bounds of their role. But the pressure of the case and the need to win on both sides and the need to solve the crime right away by the police and the need of a judge when this is a publicity case, not to appear too soft on crime or to be biased on the side of the defense, results in some of the participants breaking the rules. And by breaking the rules, I mean, for example, a prosecutor may not turn over evidence that points to innocence when they discover it, because it's like handing an advantage to the other side, which runs against their competitive instinct. And the danger of that isn't just, oh, gee, they broke the rule. It's that the rule is there to prevent innocent people from being convicted, and it is not a fantasy or a construction out of whole cloth to say that prosecutors do that. The papers you'll see of someone being released from prison after 30 years when they've discovered evidence that the prosecution had that proves not only they're innocent but points to the real culprit, which, as a result, the real culprit can go on and commit other crimes. Now, I've had some cases, not many, but some, where that's happened, that prosecutors have hidden evidence. So examples of that are not just created for drama. They're based on reality.
Mm-hmm. Let me jump in here once again so we can take our second break of the podcast. When we come back, more with Ed on his new book, Justice Makes a Killing. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my interview with Ed Rucker about the newest in his Bobby Earl series, Justice Makes a Killing. Let's go ahead and get back to that interview. You mentioned earlier, you write what you know. How much would you say of you is in Bobby, the character?
Well, it's not based on me because, for some amazing coincidence, Bobby Earl wins all his cases. And any good defense lawyer is going to try cases for good reasons that he might lose. Either the case is overwhelming or it is a real close case. And to accept a plea bargain for someone who might very well be innocent is not what a lawyer should do. Mm-hmm. And so it's difficult. I was fortunate that in 40 years that happened to me only once, in my view. Mm-hmm. That the person should not have been convicted. But Bobby Earl doesn't have that experience. Right.
Okay.
So, but it's not based on me.
Right.
And it is based on a accumulation of traits of other defense lawyers I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Now the conduct of cross-examination, investigation, opening and closing arguments, dealing with the judge are all things that I have experienced, and I have seen other lawyers practice in that fashion. So it's an accumulation of my experience and my observations of others.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This is, as we've said, a series. Do you have an image in your head of how many books you would like, or are you just going to keep writing as long as Bobby has stories to tell you?
Yeah, I have another one in. I don't know how many, because it's. I don't want to just turn out something. I'd like to turn out something I'm proud of.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm noodling around another one that deals back in the history of Los Angeles back in the 70s around the oil industry. Because California has this impression or a public image that people are attracted to it because of the weather and perhaps the movie industry or the great agricultural industry we have. But the real attraction that built California was the oil industry. At one point, California provided 25% of all the oil in the United States. And currently, today, Los Angeles City has 3,000 active oil rigs.
Oh, wow.
Working in the city itself. So it's an interesting aspect, once again, of something that people might not be aware of, that if you can weave it into a good story without just laying it out, but have it emerge from the story itself, might be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. You were a lawyer, so I know you wrote a lot in that profession. You said you have the 7-volume work that you did. What made you decide to turn to writing fiction?
It's something I've always wanted to do. I just, parenthetically, when I started my career out of law school, I joined the Los Angeles Public Defender's Office. And it's the way most really experienced criminal defense lawyers start off. You learn your skills because you are just thrown in and try case after case after case. And after several years there, I took an administrative position. I was a head deputy, which freed up my nights. I didn't have to worry about personally worry on a case as I did when I was trying cases. So I could write, and I many years ago wrote a legal thriller. This was long before any of the current practitioners, such as Patterson, or any of them had started to write. And I got an agent in New York. He sent it to a very good house, a publishing house in New York. They liked it. They wanted me to change the ending. And at that point, in my career, I left the public defender's office, married, had 2 kids, and had to make a living, and I got very busy. But I thought, well, this is easy. I'll just I'll come back to this when I have a little time. But the genre got very crowded in the interim. So here I am. Now I have the time. I'm giving it another shot.
Okay. And do you have advice for aspiring authors?
Yeah, one tip that I have found very helpful, that when you do your draft, you do your rewrites. I think speaking out loud, particularly the dialogue of people, rather than just reading it on the page to yourself, sort of hits your ear, whether it is sounds true to life or not. It's interesting because when you read it on the page, oh, that's a good use of words. Mm-hmm. You've turned a phrase there. Good for you. But if you read it out loud, it doesn't roll off the tongue. If it doesn't just come out spontaneously to you, somehow your ear catches it. So that would be something I would advise, mm-hmm. that you somehow read out loud some of your passages.
Okay.
And as far as thrillers are concerned, I have to chart them out. I try and chart out each scene before I start writing to color code when you will slip in a clue, where you will put in something that would support an action later on in the story, so that it all moves sort of like a wave and naturally when the reader hopefully gets to that point, oh, well, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I understood. Mm-hmm. I missed that one. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So those are the 2 things I would suggest.
All right. When you take the time to read for yourself, what do you like to read? Do you have favorite authors or genres?
I do read mysteries, but recently I've been trying to read some authors who are real masters of telling stories, such as Flannery O'Connor and Wallace Stegner, who are short story writers and wonderful storytellers, trying to get the skill, the craft of doing that. And as far as the wonderful language that some authors have, I really like William Faulkner and Sebastian Barry, who's an Irish writer. They're wonderful wordsmiths.
All right. Thank you. Do you have a website?
I really don't.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm old school.
Okay. So if people want information on the book and they want to look on the internet, where would they go?
Well, it's the book's available at your local independent bookstore, which I think we should all encourage. It's available on Amazon. You click in my name, Ed Rucker. Both books will pop up with some description of the books and some background about me. So they're widely available.
Okay. And do you have any social media?
I'm not a Facebook guy.
Okay. Not a problem. Just double checking.
Sure.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to touch on at this point?
Hopefully the reader of the books will see that the role of a defense lawyer is absolutely essential for our democracy. It's oftentimes depicted that defense lawyers trying to get off a guilty person.
Mm-hmm.
What the defense lawyer is designed for in our criminal justice system, the role that he plays, is that when the state brings charges against a person, now this is an extremely powerful act that as a society we're going to do. We're telling this person, you're guilty of this and we're going to lock you away. And it is also a system that in many countries is manipulated in such a way that many innocent people and many political dissidents are punished. And in our system, with an active defense bar, they make sure that the evidence that the state brings against a person to lock them up is enough. If we don't have diligent defense lawyers who don't fight and make the state prove their case, slowly the bar or amount of evidence necessary to lock somebody out starts slipping and slipping down, so that in the most horrible situation, it would be the state says they're guilty and off they go with a 5-minute trial. So people should understand the purpose of a defense lawyer. And that's something hopefully they'll see through the books.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about the Bobby Earl series, and specifically Justice Makes a Killing. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you again to Ed for taking the time to talk to me this weekend and for being very patient with some technical difficulties that we had throughout the process. I so appreciate it when I get patient and flexible authors who are willing to work with me when things do not go quite as planned. So thank you, Ed, for the interview. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for the stories that you have written. If you are interested in reading a copy of Justice Makes a Killing, you can enter to win that copy. All you have to do is go to our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, GSMC Book Review, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and comment on this episode. It is episode 177, Interview with Ed Rucker. That's it. Just go and comment on episode 177 on either Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, GSMC Book Review, and you will be entered to win a copy of Justice Makes a Killing. So you should definitely take advantage of that, especially if you're a fan of this genre. I hope that you, again, had a wonderful weekend. Hope that you spent it doing exactly what you wanted to do, and that so far your week is going well, that your Tuesday was not too Monday-ish. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me for the GSMC Book Review Podcast. I hope you will join me again next time to talk more about books, etc. In the meantime, have a wonderful week, and take some time to get lost in a good book. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmc.com. GSMCpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.